You.
Hi,
Hi,
hello.
how are you?
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. We'll just quickly wait for Luti. I think she will be joining shortly. She's moderating today's session.
Okay, sure. No problem.
We get it. We have this problem all the time. So Fatia is also here, and
Hey, hello.
Hi.
so I'll just
How are
quickly
you?
use the session, and then I'll hand it over to you, Luciana, to moderate today's session. So, good evening, everybody. Today we have Fatia from Indonesia, who is from Kontras, and who will be talking about police brutality and civil liberties in Indonesia. And along with her, we have Luciana Pol, who's from CELS, and she will be moderating today's session. So, Luciana, hand over the session to you, and we hope to have a great session today. So,
Okay, thank you very much and welcome everybody. I am Luciana Paul from CELS, it's a human rights organization from Argentina. And I guess the reason I'm here is because through the International Network of Civil Liberties Organization, we have shared a long history of joint work in topics related with police brutality, in particular police practices around protests. So what I think it has been fascinating over the years is how different trends expressed in different parts of the world, and we do have common problems in very different parts and regarding maybe protests that are very different in their nature. But we had identified, I'm sure Fatia will tell you a bit about how they express themselves in Indonesia today. Um, we have had these common trends of excessive use of force, of the use of less lethal weapons in a way that is intended to provoke harm on purpose towards certain populations, how the journalists and the press are many times also affected by the use of force and their work is being prevented on purpose by police forces, how in some countries there is at the same time a very strong advance on the criminalization of the people who are protesting, using charges that are disproportionate or inaccurate, even the charges related with terrorism and sedition and charges that have very long sentences. At the same time, the collection of empirical evidence of all these kind of problems around the world have um, developed an international concern around this, and in particular, some of my colleagues and INCLO, we have worked together around the Human Rights Council and the development of some standards on the proper policing of assemblies. But the implementation of the standards that had been accomplished is now probably one of the most challenges, the most clear challenges that we have in the future. So I think that today reflection on the things that happened in Indonesia, the students' protests, and all the police practices around them, including sometimes the use of force in a very exaggerated and disproportionate way, will illuminate it as so what could be some of the strategies that in this case Kontras have started and had deployed. As you may know, it's a very active and creative organization, so we're very happy to have here Fatia to illuminate us in their work.
Okay, thank you very much, Luciana, for the introduction and then how the general context that you already explained. Perhaps perhaps before I starting my presentation, I will greet all of the audience here. Thank you very much for the opportunity and inviting me as well to share to all of you regarding the situation of the police brutality in Indonesia and how rampantly the situation of violence, but also how the stronger student groups also gathered together related to several human rights situations in Indonesia. So basically, Kontras is the Commission for the Disappeared and Victims of Violence. So Kontras was established in 1998 with the family of victims of enforced disappearances that happened during the authoritarianism era of Suharto for 32 years, since 1965 to 1998. And Kontras was established together not only by the activists, but also with the family of victims itself. And along with the time passing by, a lot of people actually believe in Kontras having a lot of trusting to, also supporting them to do some legal assistance, to conduct campaign, and then also research regarding a lot another of various human rights situation. One of them is also about the civil liberties issues. And Kontras is also one of the member of INCLO. And we just recently joining INCLO in 2019. So it's actually quite recent, but it is actually also related to see on how the international trend on the civic shrinking space, and then how we see actually the situation right now in Indonesia is not really having a big development on how the government tackling the human rights violations. Okay, without further ado, maybe I can just start my presentation, Luciana.
Of course.
Okay, all right, I will start then. Sorry, I still disabled to screen sharing. Can the host maybe allow me? Okay, great. Wait a second. Where is it? Okay. Okay, let me just restarting my Zoom first because I have a technicality problem. I will get back soon. Wait a second.
Can I take this moment then to just double check how much time for the exposition we have, and then how much time for exchanges and questions?
Hi. So I think
We can
Fatia,
see your screen now.
Luciana, you are on mute.
Not just saying that we can see
Can
your
you?
screen.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes,
Everyone?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, so I will just start the presentation. Okay, so in the general context that Kontras has a lot of like a documentation regarding how the police brutality actually happening in Indonesia. And there are several like big event of massive demonstration that already happening in Indonesia after the 1998. We know that the wave of demonstration to deruling the authoritarianism in 1998 that led by Suharto, also actually led by the students that at the time actually actively doing a lot of protesting, and then also occupying the House of Representative buildings, and that become one of the most emblematic moment during the time of the Reformasi, when Indonesia touching upon the democratic state at the time. And after that, in the history, there is never like a very massive demonstration happening in Indonesia until 2019. It was led by several student body from the universities in Indonesia that raising a lot of concern regarding the situation of policy making, about the discriminative regulations that actually committed by the government. In 2019, we have big protest demonstration or a series of demonstration that happening in 2019. We called that Reformasi di Korupsi or Reformasi Corrupted, when several regulations regarding the anti-corruption and then also the criminal code bill actually threatening the freedom of expression, the freedom of assembly, and then also like threatening the freedom of the journalists as well, because they are actually limiting a lot of our movements, and then we are being threatened with several discriminative articles that contains in the new criminal code bill. That's why the student groups at that time actually gathering a lot of people, including labor, civil society groups, or even like general citizens, to raise the concerns in front of the House of Representative building for a week. But until that moment, there are a lot of actually weapons that being used by the police to pulling back all the demonstration participants, with using the tear gases, water cannons, rubber bullets, and other weapons that actually becoming very excessive, and arresting 3,000 students from those series of demonstration. And some of them actually also died. So five people actually died because of the police brutality at that time of the Reformasi di Korupsi mass demonstration. And until now, the perpetrator of the shootings, so they were being shot by the police during the demonstration, not only happening in Jakarta, but also in other regions in Indonesia. Until now, the perpetrator never become touching or appear into the court process. There is no legal process to actually giving the sanction for those perpetrators that conducting the shootings to the demonstration participants. And when we know and we demand to the court doing some criminal procedures at that cases, the police actually just giving them like ethical sanction for the perpetrators that actually shootings the activists and then also the students. And then there is never like some kind of evaluation after those kinds of violence that happening in field during the demonstration. And actually during the time of pandemic after 2019, we do a lot of like mass demonstration digitally, but it is also actually become one of the avenue for the police to conduct another excessive use of force. So the police actually issuing several regulations regarding cyber patrol. So they are now having like a virtual police to see people that actually criticizing the government in the name of defamation to the public officials. And until now, we already have like 125 cases of arrest because of the people that criticizing the government related to COVID-19 issues, and then omnibus law issues and other issues that actually become like the biggest concerns for the citizens to raise in the digital arena. So here you can see from our data, from our report in the day of anti-torture last year. So we see that there is the restriction to dissent. There is 24 incidents that happening across Indonesia, and then there were forced dismissals, tear gas shootings, and arbitrary arrests. And you can see this is like a very big figures of numbers that actually happening during a year. And it's already developed more after there is new big wave of demonstration as well that happening in 2020 to reject the omnibus law that already enacted by the Indonesian government. Regarding torture, the police already and still in the position of the most dominant institution that committed to torture in Indonesia. From 48 cases of torture, the police institution actually conducting the most rampant torture that happening in Indonesia, mostly happening in the police resort sector. So it's in like a region area, in local area. And most of them are actually happening to the custody or the people that being arrested by the police. Okay. And usually Papuan people is actually become the most vulnerable groups that usually be targeted by the police to be arrested and having physical violence like persecution, arbitrary arrest, shooting, intimidation, and other violence like extrajudicial killings as well that happening to the Papuan people. So sorry, this is in Bahasa, but we have 1,324 victims of violence by the police regarding the situation in Papua, and this is happened to the Papuan people. This is the data from July 2019 until June 2020, and there are 63 incidents of violence related to the situation in Papua. And it is actually very difficult for us to gain information about the situation of violence that's happening in Papua because the limitation by the government. Internet throttling happens, and then also the threats to the human rights defenders of Papua. If they want to defend the situation of human rights violations in Papua, they will be claimed as doing a treason act by the government and being arrested. Kontras was one of the legal assistants for 6 Papuan human rights defenders in 2019. When they were actually defending about the racism issues that happening to the Papuan people. But then 6 of the human rights defenders was arrested because of the accusations of treason act, because they were raising the flag of Morning Star, which is like the special flag for the Papuan people, like the symbol of them. Okay. And not only like a lot of brutality or excessive use of force that happening in field directly when we are doing demonstration, dissents, and other protests, but also it's happening in the cyber arena, which is affected to the cyber attack to several activists as well. For example, like in December to November 2020, there is 17 cases of cyber silencing against individuals, institutions, media sites, including journalists, and then also like academics actually. And some of our colleagues from Kontras or even from the other organizations also become like the victims of the cyber attacks, such as like doxing, phishing, hacking, and then even terror to our social media platforms. Sorry. So this is like the situation, the case for a Papuan COVID-19 situation, corruptions, and others. Others usually the cases about like omnibus law and other issues that actually raised by the civilians in the social media platform during the pandemic. So this is my last page actually. After that, we can help more discussion on police brutality in Indonesia. So the key problems is that why the police is actually doing a rampant violence to the civilians and how they actually shrinking our civic spaces and how the situation of our liberty in Indonesia is not in a good place right now is because there is no evaluation mechanism that actually very firm for the police institution, even though we have national police institution that mandated to become their supervisory body. But the thing is, they are under the police institution itself. So they are not merely independent to conduct some kind of investigations or to do like supervisory and then also to conduct some evaluation to creating like a better mechanism or better systems inside of in the internal level of the police institution. The state also tend to give a very wide authority and legitimacy to the police institution to affirm and then also to to legitimize all kinds of violence that conducted by the police. So after we send a lot of appeals, a lot of litigation process and other kinds of advocacy, it's only been an ethical sanction and never been like a criminal sanction, because the government actually protecting the police institution from those kind of punishment. So not only that, but the police also positioned in several civil public official position in the government's arena. So it is actually become independent because they are also becoming like governors and part of the ministries and etc. So they are actually having a wider and stronger position to conduct such violence and then to preserve the impunity itself in Indonesia. And the unwillingness from the government to conduct the human rights court and then to settle the gross past human rights violation become one of the problem, because it's never been settled and the human rights court never been held, even though it's already regulated in the national legislation, but it never been applied by the Indonesian government until now, since 1998. So that's why the culture of violence, how the pattern of violence itself being preserved by the government through the police institution are still happening until now. So what Kontras have been doing is not only to conduct legal assistance, to conduct like a lot of litigation and non-litigation advocacy, but we also doing a lot of like open source to the public for like a documentation, so they can actually submit to Kontras regarding the videos or other documentation related to the police violence that happening during the demonstration or other other moments that actually very emblematic. And then we campaigning this kind of issues, this kind of videos and other products of campaign, not only to the public, but also to the international public. So we engage more with the diplomats and then also with the UN and then with the international community such as NGOs and then international students and other international groups. So they can also pushing the governments of Indonesia to conduct evaluation for the police institution in Indonesia. So usually during our diplomatic briefing with the diplomats that based in Jakarta, we always ask those states that having like bilateral cooperation with the Indonesian government related to the securitization and then also police institution development, to also pushing them to have human rights standards in their operation or to conduct such criminal sanction if the police is actually committed in such violence. So we conduct the advocacy not only in the national level through campaign and advocacy, but also the international advocacy, because we believe that the more pressure that coming to the government, the more government should, having like a pressure to conduct such improvement and then also like to repair the human rights situation in Indonesia. Maybe I'll stop here and we can move to the further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatia. That was a very interesting and complete introduction to the, not only to the problems you are experiencing now in the, I mean, since 2019, but also I found very interesting, and maybe we can comment later on the links with the past, the lack of accountability in mass violations of human rights in the past, and how that has today some consequences in the way the political system can is able or not to process some level of accountability for the violations you are experiencing now. So that was really interesting, and I would like to go back to that point later on. But I would like now to open the floor and to please invite the students or assistants that are the lawyers that are attending this talk that would like to make some comment or remark or questions to Fatia. So I'm trying to go to the list so I can see the hands. Sorry.
There is somebody that has raised a hand. Tanay?
There. Yes. Tanya, yes, please go ahead.
Am I audible? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, hello, ma'am. I'm from
Yes,
India.
you're audible. You're audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. I'm from India. Now that you have mentioned a lot of problems about how there is extreme police brutality and how the government has intervened in the lives of people, there is a question which I would like to raise, and I hope that I would get a detailed answer about it. Is that if you could explain if in what kind the right to privacy of the individuals have been exposed, or in what manner the right to privacy has been lost for the people in the country. Thank you.
Should I just directly answer, or? Okay.
I think we can answer this one, and I'm sure people will be raising their hands but you can go ahead and answer this first.
All right. So yeah, actually related to the right to privacy that happening during 2019 to 2020, we see that it's actually being decreased. And since the government actually providing a lot of platforms to the police to conduct the virtual police and the cyber patrol, that's why they actually can track our social media and then our phones. Even we have a lot of cases of hacking by the police. One of the case that we are actually become one of the legal assistants is one case to the pro-democratic activist in 2020 during the COVID time. So he was whistleblowing about the numbers of COVID spreading in Indonesia, the actual numbers, not the numbers that actually published by the government. So he raised those research to the social media, and then also he is actually criticizing about the COVID-19 handling, and then also about the regulation of the large-scale social restriction that applied by the government after the COVID-19 came to Indonesia. After that, his phone was being hacked. His WhatsApp was breached by unknown person, and then spreading some kind of provocation to the public. So it's like a broadcasting message by WhatsApp to several people. And when we mapping the people that actually become the receiver of the provocation, is actually the police. So we track the number, and it actually came from the police. So it is actually being plotted and he was arbitrarily arrested and detained for 48 hours. And he was being arrested in his residence without any warrant. And then he is only one person, but the police that actually taking him is like 10 people. So it creates some kind of fears, because there are a lot of people actually trying to beat him and etc. And then he cannot access to his phone. And when we found out that it's not only his phone that being hacked, but also his laptops and other digital platforms. He also being stigmatized by like some kind of recruiter from the police, like one of the like a group of people in Twitter that raising some kind of negative news about him. He is actually an LGBT, one of the LGBT IQ groups in Indonesia, and it is being raised in Indonesia because LGBT issues is one of the very sensitive issue in Indonesia because of the religious values. And he was being stigmatized, and then he didn't have his freedom actually for maybe 3 months to do some kind of movement or even to go outside his house, because he was being surveilled by the police. And then he cannot use his phone because everything was tracked by the police. So that's why he has to change any kind of like phone and other laptops and everything, because it was already being cloned by the police. So those kind of situation after that is actually keep happening to some activists that focal in social media to raise the issue on big emblematic cases of human rights in Indonesia. And it becomes very common. Even it become legitimized by the government by creating the regulation on the cyber patrol or the virtual police that now actually being happening, and a lot of people already being arrested because of the cyber police itself, because of the accusation on criticizing or defamation to the government, and then also to spreading hoaxes, or even just because he's saying some issues about the COVID-19 situation. So the regulation on COVID-19 handling in Indonesia is not actually decreasing the numbers of the COVID-19 spreading, but instead it's actually shrinking the civic space in Indonesia, because there are a lot of victims actually to become like arbitrarily arrested by the police.
Thank you, Fatia. Is there any more questions? Any other person would like to pose a question? In the meantime, I guess I have one question for you, Fatia, and this is regarding the external pressure. And I'm asking this because one of the things we learned working at INCLO is that the impact of the external pressure on a country varies greatly, where there are some countries where they take this as an international intromission that is unacceptable. Many times there are retaliations against the local partners. So to organize international actions denouncing what is happening in the country may have problematic consequences in the domestic situation. And I guess, well, you will, all the presence will know better, but I guess India could be one of these countries where it is a problematic front to bring in an advocacy. Whereas there are other countries that are kind of fearful of having an international negative view. We were talking with our colleagues in Colombia the other day, and they were saying, no, our government do care when there is the UN, or there is some of the central countries making remarks on situations of violence, etc., etc. So it is useful, but it varies greatly from country to country how to use this tool of the international pressure on international advocacy. So I'm wondering, you did mention it among your strategies. So I'm wondering, how is that in Indonesia? What are the reactions from the government?
Yeah. So actually, why we doing a lot of international advocacy, not only to the diplomats, but also to the international community, like, I mean, in general, to the NGOs, civil society, and even the student groups, international student groups. So we can have uh, like a common strategy together inside of the region. For example, right now in Indonesia, we are also doing like a multi-alliance for the situation in Myanmar, because we know that this kind of situation, the situation of violence and how the human rights violations happening very, very vast, and the numbers are increasing very, very fast, is because of the situation of pandemic as well. And we have something in common in that. So that's why we also involve in the multi alliance, because this kind of situation is not only happening in one country, but also in other countries in the region, like in Thailand, in Hong Kong, in Philippines, and in other countries as well. Sometimes the government very resistant to responding some sensitive issues like Papua or LGBT or death penalty issues in Indonesia, if the foreign countries are actually creating some recommendation on those kind of situation. But those response, even it's positive or negative, it become our ammunition actually to conduct more advocacy regarding the issues or the cases. So after we know that the Indonesian government actually responding on certain issues or certain cases, so it can become one of our tool as well to re-asking the government on how their position and why they don't want to commit to improve the situation in Papua, for instance. So it's actually getting back to us to become our ammunition, and it's actually really important because we know Indonesia is one of the member of the Human Rights Council. So we always raise to the public that it is very important to Indonesia to fully commit on the protection and the fulfillment and then respected for the human rights situation in Indonesia, as they already promised. One of the problematic, dilemmatic situation is that when the MOFA, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, asking the Myanmar military to stop the violence to the demonstration participant. A lot of people in Indonesia actually raising like protests regarding that, because they also doing a lot of violence here in the domestic level. But it's actually become one of the ammunition for us to say to the government, that's why you have to repair the situation in the domestic level, so you can raise a lot of recommendation or a lot of intervention to other countries for a better situation. So Human Rights Council position is not really like an achievement if you are not actually fulfilling the human rights situation in Indonesia. So that's why it's always like going back and forth. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's still very strategic for us, I think, during this time.
Excellent. Thank you. And there was a question. Oh, sorry. Did anybody want to take the floor? Okay. There is a question that was posed in the chat from Sidesh, and it says, what roadmap you have planned to tackle this? I don't know, Sidesh, if you want to make clear to what exactly are you referring to, or is it the general situation of tracking the civic space and the use of force? Maybe Fatia, you can share some thoughts on possible roadmaps.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So actually, right now, what have been become the strategic planning of Kontras is that the role of the youth right now is very important in Indonesia, especially because they are actually the one who can mobilize the people very widely during the time of like a lot of demonstration that happening in Indonesia. And student groups are the most organic groups that can raise the issues of human rights. They are not being affiliated to any kind of political groups or anything like that, but they are raising a very sincere concern regarding the human rights situation. So they also becoming a very important stakeholders because they are actually the one who can who will actually facing a lot of situation if something worse happen. So that's why the role of youth is actually very important for any kind of human rights movements, because right now, for example, 80% of Kontras audience are coming from the youth, and the youth can actually have a very fresh minds regarding like a creative ways to conduct any kind of protests, and then to do a lot of initiative to keep the pressure to the government, uh, and then how they are actually tech savvy, so they are actually more sophisticated to know about the technology that can be used to do a lot of protest digitally. So it is not only important for like a direct protest, but also in a digital level, the role of youth is very important because they also already doing a lot. And apparently the weakness is that sometimes it's not being like consolidated properly. So that's why it's become fragmented. So that's why we have to keep them more stronger and then to become one. So the pressure can be a lot to the government. And right now we still believe that the role of youth, the role of the citizens, and then the civil society in general can become the priority for Kontras. So it's not the government face to face with Kontras, but how we can make a scenario to the public, especially to the youth, to keep the pressure to the government. So Kontras is only in behind the scene, but the one who can who should do the movement is that the people. So that's why we are doing those kind of method right now.
Right, excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Fatia. I just wanted to, well, we have 7 minutes left, so I would like to encourage anyone who would like to raise their hands to do it now, because we only have time for some final reflections. I mean, coming from Argentina, Fatia, I would like to bring this thing of how we deal with the memory and the history of the recent events in terms of massive human rights violations. And in my country, where there was a very long process of very difficult and long process of accountability regarding what happened during the dictatorship. In the 90s, where there was laws that actually prevented to take to trial the perpetrator of the violations, what the civil society did organize in a way of keeping the memory present was to organize some truth trials that did not have any legal status, but there were trials where people who had suffered and victims and family members of people who were assassinated and disappeared could go and tell the truth, and that evidence would be gathered for the moment when the judicial route was open to do actual trials, and that was really really useful at that time. So I wonder, and also you said that you are functioning as an open source to receive this information about the current human rights violations. So I just wanted to ask you, what are the possibilities of having this kind of information gathering about the past and about what is happening now, for when the situation of lack of accountability, improves a bit.
Yeah, so actually, in Indonesia, for the movement on the gross human rights violation, we are actually reflecting a lot from the movement that happening in Argentina, by the Madres of the Plaza de Mayo. So we have the similar silent act movement every Thursday in front of the presidential palace, and it's still happening until now, or it's been already 18 years. Even the Madres of the Plaza de Mayo was in Jakarta in 2005, if I'm not mistaken. So we are actually looking up a lot from the Argentina, and we also have one of the People's Tribunal in Netherlands for the case of crimes against humanity in 1965. So the International People's Tribunal was held in ICC at that time, to see about the the cases and then the numbers of victims, etc. And we were supported by one of the organization that in the Netherlands as well. And I don't know, for the open source, one of our goal is actually to see and to make the government see that the numbers or the cases is not, we are not actually overwhelming the situation. So it's not being made up. It's really happening. That's why we gather a lot of public to do the open sources and to submit those kind of documentation to Kontras, because we want to make the government see that it is actually really happening, and they have to open their eyes actually to do some kind of evaluation, and then also to do like a corrective mechanism for the police or the military institution to conduct such reparation for the victims as well. But I don't know whether there is any kind of other possibilities to do another People's Tribunal for this kind of events, because from the last Indonesian People's Tribunal that we have, it is actually being blocked by the government. So we have a lot of difficulties actually, because they were being threatening us as well. So that's why it should be very careful, and then with this kind of situation, it's actually very difficult for us to conduct those kind of mechanism.
Right. Yes, I understand that you have the combination of the restriction of the civic space, these very activities of gathering information and trying to reconstruct the memory could be dangerous itself, and there could be some threats to the human rights organizations who engage in that. So I can appreciate the extra challenge. We are approaching to the end. I would like to invite the organizers or the people present at the talk, if somebody would like to make some final remarks or some very brief final question to Fatia.
Hi, I think it's been very enlightening. Also, keeping in mind that India, I think at this point is going through a certain phase where we are also, as citizens, facing a lot of, incidents of brutality against academicians, journalists, activists across the nation for a varied reasons. So I think it is good to have a learning experience from our neighbors, and also to sort of understand what are the kind of strategies that we use, what is the best way to deal with certain situations like these, because the number of cases in India has increased. There has been an alarming increase in the number of cases that we see where people are put behind bars, the trials are prolonged, bail is not granted, and it's becoming a recurring situation in India. So I think it was very interesting to have both of your insights on the situation in your countries, and also the experiences that you have been having, or the experiences, as you said, you've had in the recent past. So I think it was really, really interesting for us. as given the current situation in India. I thank both of you for this absolutely amazing session, because I think each of us will learn a lot and possibly also use this in the near future with our cases, because we are also doing a lot of cases in and around the same issue. Also, for Fatia, if you could share the presentation. And
Yeah, I think I already shared to Sneha.
oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I do have it. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I completely skipped out of mine. And also, because we are doing a lot of work in and around this area, if there is any post session reading that you would want us to refer to, that would be great, I think, so that we can share it with
Uh,
our speakers.
Maybe one thing that could be interesting to share is INCLO is finalizing the editing of a very short issue paper on the reactions of our different governments in the enforcement of COVID-19 restrictions.
Yes.
So it is interesting because we had information from Kontras, we have had information from I guess all of our members, and that gives an interesting comparative view on different advances on rights that we have identified in different countries. So we will make sure it will be ready very soon. So we will make sure to send you the material so you can share it with everybody.
I think that will be very, very helpful. Thank you so much. I would like to thank both of you again, and also everybody who's been with us today. It has been really, really nice. And I hope everybody who's attended the lecture today has really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you very much. Thank you, Luciana.
Thank you, Fatia. Thank you very
Thank
much
you,
for
everyone.
sharing all your experience. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay. Bye.